Honorable guests and TV viewers, welcome in our TV presentation, Modern City, organized by the TV station and K4 Battle Group East within the American camp Bondstill. Transition phase, which is taking now for 3 years, 3 decades, have brought lots of change in our society, going from a system of half foreign institution in organizing our own state institution, transformation of economy from controlled entrepreneur and then destroyed one, then within one free trade of system and products made in Kosovo, which we can find now in the region and also in the world. In the sphere of urban transformation, we are going from the individual building, spontaneous building of houses and other business buildings, in our space planning and legal infrastructure regulated and based in a culture of culture of European tradition. Always challenge will be the implementation of this regulation and thus mentality new towards our ambitions, our cultural barriers that limit us, and financial means that are offered by our own country and investors that are helping us so much. Today's presentation is aimed to bring ideas and interesting experiences from developed countries within the domain of city planning, good solution, but also analyzing the mistakes from which we can learn something, each of us, in compliance with the profession and task or job that we exercise. For today's organization, I would like the command of K4, especially Major Perry, and also Major Craiglow, who, even though they daily obligation within their mission, peacekeeping mission, they found time and energy to give another additional contribution for the good of Kosovan people. As citizens of Ferizaj and Kosovo citizens, we are very grateful for that. Meantime, I would like to thank the Master of Architectural Science and also Professor within the Space Planning Department of University of Pristina, Ms. Eliza, Hoxha, for contribution and dedication for Ferizaj and also the development of urban development in Kosovo. Also would have liked to thank the mayor of Ferizaj, Akim Aliu, and his cabinet that is supporting today's presentation, and also restaurant Orchide for opportunity giving with this space, beautiful space to discuss beautiful things. Mr. Ferrati, thank you. For first presentation, we invite the Major of American Army, Mr. Craiglow, the planner, master architect, who is a deputy director within the planning and development and Conway of Arkansas. It's a Love Green member of board Friends of the Tree, or in Albanian image of the Tadronive in Conway. He gave importance, not typical planning of cities, for which theme he have organized lots of lectures and presentation within USA to have community, to create communities for people and not for cars. Major Craiglow, floor is yours.
Meredita, hello. Let me start by giving a big thank you to you, Visar, for allowing me this honor to be here and speak. And let me thank you all for being here as well. This is my first international presentation as a city planner. So this is a major honor, and it is something I will remember forever. So thank you again for allowing me to speak, and thank you, Visar, for the invitation. So today, I would like to talk about urban equity. So we know the word urban is synonymous with the word city. The word equity, as I apply it here, becomes synonymous with 2 other words: diversity and fairness. And in my presentation, when I speak about building a city for all, this will not just be all people, although it definitely includes all people. It will be for all things, whether we are talking about land uses, we are talking about the structure, or we are talking about the culture. The wonderful thing of cities is that they offer a place for everyone and everything. One of my favorite city planners or urban theorists is a woman named Jane Jacobs. She wrote many books in the mid to late 20th century. And one of the quotes that I carry with me to this day is her quote here. The hallmark of cities is their multiplicity of choice. Cities offer users of all kinds endless possibilities. I believe it is that diversity and flexibility of cities that makes them the wonderful places that they are. Today I'm going to focus a lot on the built environment, not the people or the businesses or the culture. I really want to focus on the landscape. So as we think about urban equity and multiplicity of choice today, we need to recognize that the built environment of cities must provide access, support, and truly benefit for all users. There needs to be something for everyone within these cities. So who and why is this important? Who are we building a city for? Why is this important? And how do we get there? We're going to spend about 10 minutes answering those questions. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Here. Bad habit. So, when we say everyone, we mean not just the residents. Obviously, visitors and tourism becomes a strong part of who we are and our economies as well, and something that we value. Business owners, from the smallest shopkeeper or street vendor to the largest corporate or industrial business owner or manager. Service providers, these are the people who do the work that we depend on, like police and fire, sanitation services, the street repair. They are an integral part of our community, and our community should be built and must be built to support those services. Definitely all ages, young and old. Definitely all incomes, from the poorest all the way to the richest. And definitely all mobility options. That last one is important because not everyone has access to an automobile. Some people depend on mass transportation like bus or train. Others depend on walking or a wheelchair or a bicycle. And so we'll talk in a moment about ensuring that our city is connected for all mobility and transportation options. Why is it important that we build a city for everyone or for all? Choice is really what it comes down to. We need to recognize how powerful choice is. It is powerful to us as the consumers of a city, where we choose to live, where we choose to raise our family, and where we choose to do our work. Choice is powerful to the business owners of our community. Where do they choose to locate their business? Not just what city, but where within that city becomes very important. That is important for our futures, for our job, for our sales tax revenue and property tax revenue that help provide public services. It is important for the overall health of our economy. Choice is important for everyone, effectively. And that's why we need the equity, the fairness, and the diversity within our built environment. Each citizen, every single one of us in a city, whether we live here, whether we work here, or whether we visit, will have different needs and different desires. Again, cities provide that multiplicity of choice and should attempt to offer a choice to everyone. It's also important to recognize that how we build our city has implications to the infrastructure cost of our city. I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but ultimately, from the public position, the things that we pay for in our community through taxes and fees, how powerful is that return on investment within our community? Is every dollar we put into public services returning the highest quality of services to each resident, business owner, or visitor, or are we diluting that service base? That's an important part of of choice and how we choose to build our cities. So how do we get to choice and fairness and equity and diversity? I'm going to talk about 3 things today. They are balance, integration, and connectivity. Balance, all land uses. From agricultural at the most rural level, all the way through high intensity industry at the most intensive level. We want to mix land uses. We want to ensure that all of our land uses and all of our built environment is scaled to context. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Our land uses, as reasonable, are within close proximity to one another. That will help with integration and connectivity. And then finally, interconnectivity itself. I demonstrate this photograph because it is a good example of balance, integration, and connectivity all at once. We can see a balance of land uses from single-family housing to multifamily housing. And we have some commercial activity to the north. There's a large campus of some sort here with the parking area, industry here. And then you can see a high-speed road. You can see surface streets below going into the city. And you can see bicycling and walking sidewalks and infrastructure. So they have balance in this photograph, balance of land use, balance of transportation. It's clearly connected. And one of my favorite things is they've done a good job of integrating it. So the transportation networks are integrated into the built environment, and the built environment, the land uses integrate into themselves. So they are in close proximity to one another. We'll dig in deeper starting now. So the major land uses of every city don't change. They're the same everywhere we go on earth. Residential uses, commercial uses, and I'll include industrial with commercial, but often it's separate. Cultural uses, this also includes civic uses. I will go ahead and mention it now, but your cultural and civic assets are very often public in nature. They are your performing arts centers, or maybe your government, large government offices, or universities and public schools, churches, mosques, synagogues, things like that. Recreational, obviously, park space is very important. Institutional, this could also include civic, and then finally agricultural. Again, multiplicity of choice. Cities must ensure they're creating place for all of these land uses, and as reasonably as possible that these land uses are allocated in a balanced way so that there's never too much of one thing. As you see here, too much of one thing can be a bad thing. I'll give you an example. In the United States, we have what we call company towns. These are cities that are built around one single economy. Maybe it's a mine, or maybe it's tourism, or maybe it is retail, or maybe it is a university. But that entire city exists because of that one land use. And if that land use, it's similar to agriculture. If you only grow one crop and there is a disease that kills that crop, you're out of business as a farmer. If that single land use, if the economy changes and that single land use suffers, the entire city will suffer. It's very important, not only from a position of choice, but it's important from a position of economy that we ensure that there is a diversity and a balance of land uses. Next slide. Oh, I'm doing it again. Integrated. So this is among my favorite. This is proximity of land uses. When things are close together, they become more accessible, and the lines that exist between varying types of land use begin to blur. We can think about right here in downtown Farazah, not far from where we are today, we have multiple land uses going on. We have recreational land uses, we have industrial land uses, we have commercial land uses, very much residential land uses, and institutional and cultural land uses going on around us. This is an environment where things are happening in close proximity to one another. In other cases, we can think about communities that are further away that may be more isolated, where the industry takes place in a particular area, or the shopping takes place in a particular area, or the residences are in a particular area, and they're not as integrated. And we can think about how the challenges of moving from one land use to the other. Those challenges can be very significant for people if they don't have access to an automobile. So integrated land use can help ensure that we're building a city for all, because it opens the potential for walking or for cycling or for mass transit. This is done 3 ways primarily. It's done at the building, integrated building, so there's commercial activity in the bottom floor, and there's either professional office or residential in the second floor. It's done by block, where you can see a lot of commercial activity and then residential activity above. And it's also done by district. So we see a central business and economic center here, economic in here, and as we move further away, we see dense residential area, and then we move further out into lesser density residential areas, and even park space and potentially agriculture and farming further back. This is a good example of scale and distribution. The scale is appropriate. All of the largest buildings are together. They're not out on the landscape. The scale here is similar, and the scales out here are similar, and it's distributed in a way that helps people connect from one place to the next. Connected, and this is the final piece, is that we actually have to build the physical connections that exist, or in some case the information connection that exists with regards to internet service or other communication services. And all modes are important. I'm actually a big fan of landscapes like downtown Fairza. I love to park my car and spend my day walking in a city like we have here in downtown Fairza, but I honor and respect the fact that cars are part of every city environment. So we need to make sure the automobiles have a place. But we don't want to give too much space here, because then we lose space for the pedestrian. We lose space for the cyclist. The ideal circumstance when we think about how to connect areas is that we integrate our infrastructure, our connective tissue. So you can see here is a very good example of integrated connectivity. Integrated vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian. And then above you can see an integrated land use. Commercial activity, residential apartments. Here it looks like a large civic structure, and even aesthetic features like the street trees here. This photograph is a wonderful example of not only balance with land use, but integrated land use and integrated connectivity. I want to talk for just a moment. This is something that I hold near and dear. We are challenged in the United States, and this is one of the connectivity challenges I attempt to overcome every day. We have lost sight in the United States of the difference between streets and roads. I think in many ways Kosovo is much better at it than we are in the U.S. These are streets. Streets, when we think about designing connective infrastructure, streets support the activity that go on around them. So streets offer some parking, streets offer broad sidewalks, streets offer some amenities like trees or benches or newspaper stands. But streets are here to support all of this activity. This is the reason that city exists. The streets just serving it. This is a road, and roads move people from one place to another as fast as possible. That's really all they do. They don't really support any other activity along their edges. This, in the United States, is what we call a strode. It attempts to mix a street and a road. This is a highway going through the middle of a city. It's attempting to move cars at a very high rate of speed, while simultaneously attempting to support the economy along its side. And unfortunately, it fails miserably. We've been building these in the United States for maybe 50 years. And it's my generation of urban designers and transportation engineers who are attempting to undo damage like this. Unfortunately, a strode neither moves cars rapidly nor supports a healthy industry. You can see how much less economy is here than here, and how much less efficient and effective this landscape is. So that's my parting words is, as you think about shaping your connectivity, please avoid stroads. We have learned a hard lesson in the United States. Don't follow our lead in any way. Streets and roads, keep them clean. Once again, urban equity. It's about fairness, it's about diversity, balance, integration, and connectivity. It's been an honor to speak with you today. Thank you very much for allowing me this chance. I will remember it forever. If you're on Twitter and want to keep up with lots of planning chatter, I try to be daily, post daily to links and articles and my own thoughts. And how's this? I failed to click. And you can find me at West Craiglow. Thank you. Yeah, just quiet.
Thank you, Major Craiglow, for this very excellent presentation. We'll invite now Professor Eliza Hoxha, that have lots of achievement in the field of planning, and in a stubborn way she's dedicated for our country and educating new generation of architects with European values. Professor, floor is for you. Thank you. I am not still professor. I am on the way. I am pleased to be here in Ferizaj after a few years and to share this place here with the American soldiers that did a lot for our country in humanitarian aspect and safety. If we talk about the town as for space, it's important for whole generation actually, and for all communities. I think that what Craiglow talked, it's quite connected with what I'm going to say. I was lucky to work with two members of movement placemaking from New York from 2009, around 2009, and for me was another open door for access in work with community for the good of our town. And from that experience that we had for 2 years in Kosovo, in the town of, in city of Peja and Gjilan, they insisted as well that this methodology to be used with students and small projects which we did for certain spaces within the cities. And also I followed other trainings to be able to become more professional in this aspect. Why it is important to talk about placemaking or make placemaking, why is place important and why it's focused towards people themselves, you will understand during presentation. But for more, in a last meeting or new agenda of habitat in placemaking, officially it's this methodology accepted as the methodology that needs to be used to address this in new urban spaces that will create spaces to actually accommodate needs and desires of different people and different social categories. A simple word or simple sentence that tells a lot is when we are focused in places, then we see different. It's different when we are there and observe their things, and we get to know the place with the logic, how it functions, that place. To have a right as a planner or architect to able to work or rethink or redesign that place is so much different if you do that from the office. Lots of time happen in the history of planning. There are lots of spaces they are remaining empty and that have not addressed needs or desires of people that live there or that visited that place. I will start with Churchill saying, which in original, we create our towns, cities, and they did us, create us. So the way how we create cities, then new generation or ourselves or our children or our nephews will be creating through that. So it's very important process, cultural one, economic, political one. So in the Project for Public Spaces or NGO from New York have adopted this saying for addressing public spaces. And it is very important. So we see two spaces, different ones. One is empty and connecting with the wideness of the road, as it was mentioned earlier, Craiglow, and also with the measures, with the buildings and the roads and how much they are connected with each other, and needs that people have to live or to enjoy or use that road. And towns or those long time ago that are narrow as well, or roads that sometimes, or streets actually, that offer a lot of things for us. And another case to understand that lots of times we try to give different solution to transport modality. We try to offer so much spaces for them, but we forget that focus have to be among the people, because we create cities for people first and then for all other needs that fulfill the human's need for life. To be able to understand this process, I would have liked to go through some principles which will be taken as a base, how to create public successful spaces and general space or urban space. And Holly White, as it is called in America, it's a sociologist or advocating planner, and part of other guards of planners when in the end of 60s started to discuss and to research and to address the issue of American cities at the beginning, and then this methodology was used in other towns. Now it is very present in Europe, and officially it's part of the UN Habitat Agenda for better cities and more sustainable cities. Main principles, so basic ideas. The first and most important one is that the community is an expert. And the question is now, why we are finishing schools? Because we do our schooling to be able to address this issue. And we are supposed to do that. But that time passed. Cities, when we were addressed or thought of or developed from the office, and the architect or planner was the main. No, it's not anymore. We are now kind of a moderator of the process or guider of the process by knowing process, but ensuring that all actors and all communities are part of process. Only that way we can understand what are the needs, what are the desires, the dreams, and how they can be translated then in space and to be interpreted in space, and how it is, what is the investive capacities, local and international one, to be able to improve cities in future. As principle number 2, that it is that we are creating place and not design. There are so vacancies that have, and when you see the spaces, and you see those spaces without people, even though they were awarded with the first place, they were not focused in people, only in design, and they forgot to think about the human category that would live around it. What are their needs, or the way of life or culture, which is very important dimension. What else is important in this process? We cannot do it anything on our own. We are only moderator. There are so many stakeholders. Some of them have main role, some of them second role, maybe some of them don't have very important role in planning process, but are influenced from the plan, so we have to have in mind them too. Majority, it can be, of course, majority of the government people, yes. They will say it's costly, it can be not done, because procedure with people is costly regarding the time and money-wise. Only if it's done in a sincere way, I think it will produce a place that will fulfill the people's needs that they will use. Other principles regarding the planning techniques and how we distribute the information, especially today's day when we cannot be complaining that our information cannot reach community, because we have some different modality of communication. And what we can say is that if we are in certain places and we want to address those places, we can learn a lot only by staying there, observing. It's incredible if we go in different days and observe and stay there, and we can think and we can decode social relation. Why is people going through this line, stay in this space, different groups, different group age, or different cultural group, why they are in that position, why they are using this certain position. There are so many things. Next step, of course, to have a vision, create a vision. There are so many stops. You cannot go only immediately to go with your ideas. Then to translate ideas in action is very important. Sometimes good is idea on paper, but an idea to be translated in actions requires engagement. In a lot of cases, the form supports the function. So it's good to think for spaces so that people can use freely, not how we dictate to them, but for them to feel comfortable and to use in their own way. Triangulation. This was difficult for me to translate in Albanian. Some kind of triangle of functions, of form and people. And implementation. When it comes to implementation, usually in public spaces and in cities, it's the municipality that needs to address, and then of course through partnerity platform and with business, private business, always have, without violating public interests, but strengthening it and offering possibility for public sector too. If we don't have money, sometimes it's very simple. We can start only with making, planting flowers, making it green. We have some kind of energy as a community in Kosovo that if somebody does something and it's good, then all the others try to copy. So I think that it's time to copy now someone else that plant trees and plant flowers. Money, it's not an issue. Yeah. Yes, we can do a lot with partnerity, with partnership. Even if sometimes we don't have money, we can do it with different actors, stakeholders that can offer services and create these places. So we have never finished. I'm going through faster here, and all of what I said, where community is an expert and have to be involved community in process from the beginning, and this have to be done permanently in different phases with different groups. Because if you ask children in Ferizaj what space they want, if we get a space there and ask them, their vision or their idea for that space will be completely different what we can think or what an elderly will think, or who cannot use maybe that space, because there is no activity that is offered to him to have some kind of entertainment or have his own social life there. So this would be one of the important principles. What I said earlier, design is a tool to create a space, but it's not the most important. So product is not a very important, most important, but process is important. I said it earlier. This is just to illustrate that we cannot do it on our own. We need somebody else to push things, to push process, to support, to be courageous, and to maybe break a taboo. In lots of time our community in a context, different political context, economic politics, they hesitate to try different things, to undertake initiatives. Always there are obstacles, always. And there are always, but we shouldn't stop. It is very important what I said about the observing. We very little, even today or even since after the war, with a new legal frame, planning, the main focus of planning is inclusiveness, but it's not done enough. Even if it was done, something was just formally like public hearing or formal meetings that have not resulted with meaningful process or meaningful product. Vision. I will be you should be ambitious, but with the legs on the floor. If our dream cannot be supported, there are no base, then it's a problem. Then will remain only like a list of wish list or dream. So we should be visionary, but realistic, based on resources we have, human one, economic one, cultural one, or artistical one, etc. What I said earlier about the form supports the function, different levels that determines the space, the movement space, or soft landscape. This can be used in different ways as well. The triangle of the services that support each other, certain functions that are close to community and fulfill the life. What can we do? It doesn't cost, it's very cheap. We can start planting flowers, planting trees. I think that cities of Kosovo need so much for plants because of so much big buildings being built lately and decreasing green spaces, and this have influenced and change of microclimate change in pollution of our air and lots of other things that it's making our cities not sustainable. Money is not an issue. It is very true. We can start with small steps. Community that lives there in that space, which needs to be addressed, either municipality, because to do a plan with continuous steps, how to contribute in process. We have not finished ever. We have seen in other towns, but also in Kosovo, it have been invested a lot in public spaces, in redesigning them, but in a very short while, they don't look afterwards good, because they forgot about maintaining it when it comes to cleaning it, when it comes to technical infrastructure that requires repair or other things. I want to share with you also some of the activities that we did in Kosovo, so that this is not remaining only in the air, what I said so far. Yes, we did some activities in Peja, Gjiljan, Mitrovica, Pristina, and we did have discussions with the younger generation to establish a stimulating platform so that with the goodwill and with initiative, different things can be done in Kosovo, and young people it can be open up new roads, new doors for our youngsters to be able to work outside the Kosovo, abroad, to make it possible all this process. We have translated one of the guidelines, main one, which PPS have, which is how to turn the place around. We have translated in Albanian. This guideline, which is a manual, we have distributed for free in 2011 when we published it for municipalities of Kosovo and for also Ministry of Planning, so that they can have, or they have this kind of an opportunity or to use this as a methodology. What we did in different contexts, we have used methodology and we adapted and used by a certain group of interest to work in a certain space. This is like a youth center Zoom, where we worked with the youth center's youth to address the places around it, to be in favor of their activities, so that they don't do activities only inside, but also to use the external or outside space. There is a linear park or public space in outskirts of Gillian, which was together with New York PPS. You see Steve and Elena are from New York. They came few times during the year to work together with the community, with representatives of institution, I mean municipality of Gillian and other group of interest to have a list of issues, to have space diagram and to see how these issues can be accommodated within one certain space. Always there are problems when it comes to implementation, because this idea of partnerity, public and private partnership, in reality it's not much present. This is space above here that can be seen that was just left aside. Was only half of the project was implemented. So this is only phase when it was lying. You see the other half is not being treated because of a lack of the funds. So neither me and another group of my colleagues as an organization, we are not strong enough to push things process, because we are not decision makers in Gillian, but also municipality is not open to continue this process. I believe that there is half results regarding what we did, but we have thought that to be able to transfer this methodology into placemaking. This was addressed in Amsterdam, actually last year. We thought that main point was university, and so how we can go outside school and talk about public spaces to be better, more inclusive, if within the university we don't have this kind of spaces. And then that's when we started, and we called this moving places more from the threshold, or to kind of fix the space within the university, and then to be able to go outside the space of university. So we have a long process to be able to identify processes, challenges within the campus. Of course, we did not have money, because the university always says, no, I don't have money to do this thing. So we have decided to find other opportunities. We have talked with the Ministry of Agriculture and they gave us 3 young plants, the forest agency, and for 2 days, voluntary-based, with staff and students, we have planted those within the space of Architecture University and Construction University. This is Architect University, this is Construction. This is a Facing River project. The main focus was in analyzing and researching, which is vital for every city. But in Mitrovica, this is border. It was psychological border so far. It was, but now it's kind of an administrative border of these 2 parts of the city, so northern and southern municipality, or Mitrovica. So it was idea to analyze the potential of the space and see how can this space be transferred in some kind of recreational center for the small economies as well, and to gradually create opportunities to the citizens to look at the river and to have opportunity for reconciliation, which is a very long process, and of course it's not impossible. We have had a regional workshop here with different youngsters from different regions, and it was a successful project. Of course, always when it comes to implementation there was problem, and in the end I want to share with you a quote or saying which comes from PPS as well, that creating a spaces, beautiful spaces, or magnifying, to know the people with whom you share those places, or enjoy, or live, or saying that Jane Jacobs said. I would have stopped another saying. Jane says that every city offers something for everyone, and everyone can give something to a city. Thank you. Thank you, Eliza Hoxha, for her presentation. In the second part of this program, we have planned interactive session with the question from the audience. So I will open up a discussion. If you have a question for our guests, feel free.
Major Nathan Perry. First, I just want to say thank you for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to have the conversation. Both of you spoke about choice and the importance of choice for those people who live in this community, who visit the community, the businesses that operate in this city of Ferizhai. Can you tell me what the planners or leaders of this community can do, what actions they can take to offer those choices to those people? Thank you.
You want to speak?
Sure. So I walk outside the doors of this building that we're in right now, and I'm amazed at the framework and the foundation that exists in downtown Ferizhai today. My first trip into Ferizhai was probably 8 or 9 months ago, but I noticed right away the trees, the broad sidewalks, the parking that is discreet and small and often to the side or the rear of structures. I noticed taxi cabs and buses. I noticed the train station across the street. I noticed the plaza space on the far side of the train tracks from us today. I noticed the residential housing that exists above the commercial businesses like we're in today. And I knew right away that this was a city that I loved, first off, and second, a city that is worth replicating. I think, quite seriously, these 8 blocks that are this main street area, that are this downtown area, should become a model for many other cities, not only in Kosovo, but throughout the world. This is what I do in my hometown. This place embodies balance, integration, and connectivity that I spoke about, and it's most definitely attractive to people because I know that this is a human environment. To your point, Eliza, this is an area that is built for humans. As we drove in today, thousands of people were moving about the city on foot, wherever they were going, whatever they were doing, whatever their purpose for being here, they were using their bodies to power themselves through this downtown area. So it is crystal clear to me that it is an area with a sense of place. And if you build an area with a sense of place for humans, the correct scale and the correct context, humans will come to it and they will do business and they will live and they will fall in love and they will consume the arts and they will invest in it. So this is an absolute model that I think is worth continuing to invest in and doing more of throughout the landscape of Kosovo.
Thank you. I have a little part in this, what you were saying.
Part of the group that we worked in a regulating plan for this center a few years ago, I'm not sure how many years ago, and some of the components of the plan today are reality. Not maybe all have the way we have thought of, because sometimes with the enthusiasm that we had after the war to develop our country, we don't measure properly the opportunity or possibility to do it. So anyway, I still think that Kosovo cities and Ferizhai as well have had or that have addressed needs of the community, especially business community, because if we see economic investment diagrams show that Kosovo is on its own development, how it was translated, that development when it comes to space-wise, we have good things that have happened, but also there are problems, big problems that we have inherited today from plans, from the planning process. First of all, because we have not involved all actors or stakeholders in the process, but also in second one, that the business community is lacking, even when it's not there, it's absent, even when it is invited in planning process. I don't want to politicize but the discussions are done in different levels. The process of the city will go fine in Kosovo only when the planning process is open and involve all people's categories, different categories, and then process is done there and not in the office. This is very important to understand, because this does not violate the investment of anyone or benefit of anyone. Just it addressed on the right direction, and everyone can find their own interest, and will not be violated the interests of people that are not economically powerful. I think that this is the biggest worry, because we have produced spaces that are not that much in favor when it comes to life quality. Too much square meters for building, little or not at all green spaces, not sufficient following infrastructure. In economic terms, too much investment, but in urban terms, too much problems to be able to deal Ferizaj or other cities, especially Pristina, actually. So in the sense of the choices, not all people could leave the influence, or when it comes to process, some they gave in a formal way, or some because of their benefits, personal benefit. But I think that it is important to understand that that art and culture and outside the process of cities development, they see that they just please themselves, kind of. Because if we read for many cities in the world, we understand, or you can understand, the city is produced from software, from human dimension. There's a mixture of cultural and social, and this is the spirit of the city. And all people that will visit this city, this is what will remain in the mind, in the memory. And these people do this all the time because they love what they do. And because they love the cities, they place, and they treat this as something that, in a cosmetic, aesthetical way, look good. But then in 2 years, somebody comes and just wipes it out without feeling for it. So there are activities that are not included in the process. So municipalities could have done or benefit so much from this community, would have created spaces for them so that they do the job the way they do to achieve the dream, but also they would have create identity, new identity for the Kosovo cities. You have a small example. A new name. Newborn monument was put in a space in a historical momentum and remains there. And every time, every year takes another look and gives another message. It's very simple, but there are like kind of this all the way, like I Love Europe or Amsterdam, and those are kind of the mark that they mark the city, where tourists or locals as well start being proud of it, from that sense of place that was mentioned. It's another level of the citizens' awareness, responsibility, and connection with that city, which is very important to start to build. So collectively being proud. And to be able to do this, we need to reanalyze the collective memory, because we are wiping them, and then this cannot produce this. But it's hard for us to where to grasp, where we connect it. Was it? Any other question for a panel? Or just to comment or critics? Yes. First of all, I would like to thank for the contribution. And what I wanted to say is that maybe it wasn't said sufficiently what its problem or main problem in planning, regarding urban planning, is a triangle between interest, citizen interest, individual interests, business interests, and state interests, in this case municipality interests. And of course, this is the main problem. If you have a look, citizens' interests are a very personal one. Today, one citizen with a property or land parcel used to want to use maximally, to build something maximally there without and neglecting someone else's interest. Business in construction business, it's have become a business which sees a building as a trade, not as a contribution only as a business. And also municipality interests. Municipality attempts to have green spaces, wide roads, but also there is a desire, but there is very minimum investment, only for companies that win tenders for planning, and that's it. This is the main difficulty. So in Ferizaj we are now in the phase of drafting area maps, and this will be difficult for us. We are in this triangle conflict, and how we will find a solution will be a problem. Question is how to overcome. Maybe answer could be relative, because not every country has a different specifics, because plans have been done way before and thick lines have been established. But in our town, for example, just in Ferizaj, maybe you have seen the map of Ferizaj. It's a map with parcels, very small parcels, very, very small parcels. And there are small interests that became big interests, so it's hard to do the planning that way. So, but I still believe, since it's direct TV program, they will understand that in chaotic situation can be somebody win, but if it's planned properly, it can be everybody will win. But can I take American examples? Because the law is more addressed based on platform and the way how developed the cities in America. So I think one thing essential is to understand each municipality that they cannot do themselves on their own, because there is no budget. It's not socialism system. We are in the economy of free market. I'm not talking only for Ferizaj. I'm talking as a citizen. I don't know how to say. They just sit up there. They don't go down to community in that level. There are so much things to discuss, because first of all we have problem, space aspect, information aspect are not consolidated. We don't have a general base that all information are there. Norms and regulation for territory of Kosovo, just very, very late was approved document. So a company that have done this, of course, it was referred somewhere. Somebody are German norms, somewhere are former Yugoslavian norms. So anyway, are different norms. There are ways, for example, maybe colleagues can tell more about the American context, where majority of public spaces are managed from the corporations. And there are different corporations or different businesses that invest in public spaces. They benefit from it and ensure that it's space open for all groups of interest, different times, different ways, to be able to offer opportunity for all the ones that want to have a luxurious lunch in the park, or if the ones that cannot have this, maybe to have other spaces for the others in the same park, so that they all can be part of that space. America have lots of examples. Otherwise, yes, I do agree with the part, yes, when it comes to communities, they always talk for their own parcel and their interests. So this is process. We have to work a lot with community to create the mindset, the urban mindset, to be able to see outside their house and outside their door. Citizen
interest. It's a great question. So, and it is not unique to Kosovo at all, or Ferizaj at all. I heard you mention in your triangle really 4 things that I caught. I caught the resident, I caught the developer, the builder, the business owner or the economy itself, and then the government. I will go ahead and lump the developer and the business owner in together in just the commercial activity. And in my triangle, I think of it as the provider. That's the economy, the business, the developer, whatever's going on. So you have a service provider in whatever form of their environment they build. You have a consumer, and this is the visitor or the resident, and then you have the government. And this is an important piece that I think we are learning in the United States just now. I think we failed for much of the 20th century. The government is not a strong voice. The government is a weak voice. You're exactly right, Eliza, in your presentation. The government is here to be an advocate for the community. And so when we talk about how we do this, we must establish a vision. Back to Eliza's talk. The vision must be from the community. The community knows what they desire. They know, if you ask them, they know what they want out of their city. And in the United States, we failed to do that for many, many decades through the 20th century. People like me, planners, would plan, we would deliver plans from the top down, and our residents were forced to just consume, and our economy was forced to just consume that plan. They had a particular way they would build, and that environment became, that city became what it is, and it lost a little bit of its humanity. In my generation of planners, we're doing it from the bottom up, and so the city is not delivering a plan. A city is guiding a planning effort, and that vision comes from the bottom up and from the outside in. And what I've discovered in my 10 years of doing this is that when I present options for one type of city or another type of city, one landscape or another landscape, I noticed two things. I'm surprised by a lot of answers. Even though I'm the one with the college degree and all the years experience, I learn a lot from my community members just by asking and listening. And the other thing that strikes me back to my presentation is the diversity of answers that I get. Everybody wants something different. What might be right for you, sir, in your community may be wrong for me. And sir, ma'am, you may want something totally different. And so that's the beauty of allowing the community to establish the vision. Once that vision, it's the government's job to develop that vision into a plan, into a document that will be regulatory and guide the future development. But the government, that's not the government's plan. They've just containerized it into a document. And now the government serves as an advocate on behalf of the community that authored that plan. Now the government works with the providers, the economy. Maybe they provide, maybe it's a university, or maybe it's a corporate business, or maybe it's industry, or maybe it is a residential developer building homes and apartments. That person will be more likely to honor and respect that plan because that plan embodies the will of the people. And that provider is here. That provider makes money when they provide services commensurate to the will of the people. They have an activated market that's interested in what the government is now advocating to be developed. But it must begin service provider, service consumer, and advocate. The government must see itself as an advocate, not the delivery, not the conceiver. And the vision and ultimately the plan must come from the community first, not from the leadership, from the people. The service providers will tailor their efforts to that. And that's what we're discovering in the United States just in my generation, just really in the last 20 or 30 years since people like Jane Jacobs came along and taught us what right looks like. And we now have to reverse 20th century worth of poor development into better development with the help of people like Eliza and Project for Public Spaces. They're great people. So it is. That's how we're solving it. And I hope I answered your question.
My name is Victor, a director of Moral Fest, that today will be done in, it's a third edition of different topics. We all, first of all, thank you for this debate and also invitation. I believe that this is a very welcome debate, even though it has been for some time that we have thought of, and we have not started this kind of initiative. Otherwise, we are all aware that our cities, not just Ferizaj and Pristina, but all cities of Kosovo are engulfed with architecture in not proper places. We all know, but we have to find a key of intervention or to stop this phenomena, which are negative phenomena, because we are doing a work that with times the new generations will insult us somehow. You mentioned, Eliza, that in developed countries, it's true that for the planning, space planning, it will be taken the idea of a child. I have seen this in one of a program that for spatial planning they have taken a statistic by children, from the early age children, from 5 years old, and they have taken their ideas, and it was very interesting that never a grown-up would have thought of. So here we have some shortfalls. Let's not talk about the preschool children, but even for other planning, apart the commission that will be assigned by the municipality, I don't think that anyone from either I am artist, so it doesn't mean that I should be a part, but to take an idea of an artist, a designer, and other profession as well, because team which is more comprehensive will be better success. It was mentioned also the moral, because it is a sensible thing in my profession. Yes, there are cases when we have experienced with all work that artists, unique work, with some time it was destroyed, that work of that artist. So this is some problem. This is a problem. This is an obstacle. This because we don't have a power to protect our creativity, our work. I will give my opinion. Not that I have thought long, but maybe citizens don't have that much power to intervene themselves. Of course, even government as well. It's not the main power. And we have a role as well there, of course, by maybe a law, approving a law, for example, for green spaces. Let's take an example. Maybe it would have been a good condition, for example, if one 10th-floor building to have this much square meters or kilometers green spaces to be kind of conditioned by the municipality or by government to determine green spaces. I'm not architect. I hope you understand me. So I think that in our municipality can have some influence in regulating better our space.
Kids, yes, the kids. When I talk about the vision from the bottom up and from the outside in, absolutely ask your children. You'll get the greatest answers in the world. They will tell you what kind of city children need. And listen to them, because children have very particular needs. Also find a way to ask the elderly and the aging. They have different needs. Find a way to ask the wealthiest and find the way to ask the most poor. Find the way to ask everyone what city they want, and when crafting the plan, when pulling that vision into regulatory language, do your best to meet the needs of all. Remember, it's about balance, it's about equity, it's about fairness, it's about diversity. Cities offer something for everyone, and if they're not, they're failing people. We need to focus on the balance. That includes the arts, that includes culture for sure, and that definitely includes green space. I think there's a place for all of those things in every plan and in every city. So that's my piece of it.
Part of a culture and art, it's very important as a dimensional part, always addressed parallelly. Not harmonized within long-term frames within the town. I would have taken as an example Prizren, where DocuFest have changed completely the scene when it comes to usage of the town, the functioning of the town, and the economy of the town. What a festival can bring to the town, and how a town, as a city as small as Prizren, can be changed through a festival and improvising cinemas in open public spaces. So they found a way, and in all this journey, the municipality was never a partner for them, or not at all. And this is an important thing to understand, that that municipality and stakeholder of civil society and the ones who criticize, because there should be created space for cooperation to communicate and see where are cohesive points to be able to produce better city. And in the end, DocuFest, I think it's official part of the city's activity. So municipality have officialized this. After 10 years, the municipality have understood that the activity is private, but it's public in the sense what is offering to the people in a cultural way, but also economy, and because it has to accommodate so many people that come during that day. And the circulation, financial turnover that it is created that day, it can be compared with all other days of the year. I'm talking about the revenue for the small businesses and the others. Simply, yes, municipality is like a steering wheel for pushing things ahead. To be able to do this, it's to always with municipality, but always have in mind the public interests. This is the biggest challenge for municipality to understand that in the time of a socialist system, they did everything themselves. They have expropriated the land, they built it, they did everything they wanted, and they did the plan and they implemented themselves. Today, it's not that role. It's a proactive role now. And in this process, every person can give something. I will give you one example. I have read somewhere one building which was very old, had lots of graffiti in it, and in a certain moment, owner have demolished it. I don't know which country, it's outside the coast of somewhere, and artists have sued him and have won the case. They won the court case because he have not asked them and have violated his rights. We would have won so much money if we did that, if that is a law for this rights. This right. So there are so much processes. It's not time for complaining now. The aim of this debate and lots of other debates are held so that we can discuss, to learn to discuss together, to deal with problems together and not personalize them, and to be able to see what we can do together to be able to improve situation and push things ahead, where everyone can contribute and benefit. Construction engineer, graduate construction engineer. I will start with the saying of my professor that he said, problem is to find the problem, and then it's easy to solve, but difficult problem is to find the problem. Can you please raise your voice? We cannot hear you. The problem is to find the problem, and it's easy to solve the problem when you know what is the problem. I wonder if we have a time, just 2 minutes for a debate, if I have time. We know that in Egypt time, as a community, we used to stay inside the houses and were quite regulated inside. But outside our houses, we considered that it's something foreigner. Everything we did inside the house, every activity was done inside. Now this changed drastically. So every activity that we can have now outside our houses. And now I'm thinking the outside part to be looked at something which is yours, and that you will use it that every day. So I think that if it's created green space for people, or there is done an investment and good infrastructure, we sometimes neglect. A simple case, I'm a businessman, I have, let's say I have a building or apartments in one neighborhood. And if you offer to people that there is a good infrastructure, people say, I want a place where is good infrastructure. I think that the way how community behave, it's very important. If community likes better roads, trees, better apartments, it has to be offered for them solution. You as an investor, as a businessman, you see what he wants, and you have to try and offer what he wants. This was a kind of just a debate from my side. Problem is to find the problem. It is very important to define a problem, yes. Schools that we did in the 90s, we did with white pages. There were no problems, no people. North, and we did whatever we wanted in those pages, sheets, white sheets. But that time, it does not function anymore, that version. We have to go outside. We have to analyze a place, city, all layers to understand all needs or desires and to find the problem. And then, apart from the problem, to find the potentials and to understand how those potentials that we find, whichever that is, economic or nature or cultural or human, and to use that potential to be able to give an answer to the problems that we have found. And this is all before vision. This analytical process, lots of companies that did planning did not put enough importance. They did based on certain people's interests. That's why I have produced spaces where only square meter is looked at, and building it's looked at only inhabiting somewhere or living somewhere. It's not only to do with sleeping there. Living somewhere means whole city, because we live more outside the place where we sleep, or dwelling as it is in English. Something like dwelling and housing, I don't know. It's hard to say it in Albanian that, but we live in town, in cities. We get fulfilled more in cities than inside our houses. Buildings that we did build here are like shelters. We just go and sleep. But outside space, I agree with you. We treat it as something that we have not, it does not belong to us, and not take care of it. This is an issue that we have to work together in it, community as well. It's not everything black and white. It's not that municipality is not investing, but if municipality invests but city people don't invest, don't take care. But this is there is a logic in this, because us as a community and we were more orientated always internally and inside houses. Very late we started to walk outside, to use outside space. And then this space that we have not, it's not used by us. It's pity that we still keep thinking like this, as you said. But still, there are lots of good things that are happening in our cities and lots of activities, either municipality or other stakeholders that work for good of our public interests. So we are in the end now. We have one more question. Yes. I will try to be short. I thank both panelists for giving very good examples and motivating examples. I consider that can be achieved in our cities, as some places are already achieved. For example, in our city, just opposite our building here, where we are here in Orhide, there was a station of loading and unloading goods. Now that space has been redesigned. Now we have a park, even though it's a question mark on itself regarding the maintaining of that, which was discussed earlier, which is important. But despite all, I think it's a good step towards the exchange of experience from developed countries and the implementation of good practices of these experience in our cities. What I just wanted to comment, which is concerning for me, and I think that from my experiences that I have in other municipalities, it's concern for whole Kosovo territory, it's field of planning. Urban planning, it's a topic on its own. And I think that all of us as a professional, this is where we need to give more contribution, because if we talk about what Major presented, about the balance of land usage, and this we can do only through field of planning. I think that planning in Kosovo is still stiff in Kosovo. It's planning, even though we go in the field, but when we go in the phase of strategy, vision, planning, then again, all the work is done from the office, having in mind certain community or certain group of interests where they will present their personal interests by degrading public interest. So for as long we continue this way, I think we will not achieve to have proper good balance of land usage, even though I think it was a favorable situation for within the Kosovo territory in the period of afterwar time to start with good planning, but it was not done. We started building concrete, build so much, and it's so hard to redesign those spaces. But it's maybe perhaps a good moment to use those spaces which are left with good planning to build in a proper way. I consider, or I have a recommendation, that maybe not to end or conclude with this kind of meeting, which belongs to a professional field, architectural, professional design. So it's good to gather more often, all professionals, because I think that regardless policies and all other stakeholders that can influence, if the field of planning would be treated well by the professionals with a big contribution of community and voluntary group, everything will be on its own place. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Enver Haliti. Greetings for Professor Eliza and also for the Major Craiglow that came to share some time with us and debate about things like city of Erizai and others. This was debated a lot in the municipality assembly and also in different media like Tema and other local media. I have a question. I don't know for how long the Major will be in Erizai, but I believe that Professor Eliza was part of drafting the center area, urban center. How they have thought of solving the problem of traffic in urban part of Erizai? Have they had an idea about that, how to have, what kind of solution to have for traffic, some kind of mobility plan? How do they see? We know that Erizai have very, very narrow streets and roads, lacking green spaces, and this urban space is simply have so many other buildings without respecting green spaces or parks, etc. And my second question regarding the responsible bodies. It is true, there are interests, as the director said, but municipality is the one who determines the regulations. So municipality should respect laws and instructions that derive from there, and the builders, constructors have to follow those, and those have to be equal for everyone. I've heard from the previous executive that the value of the parcels is increased, and if the building is higher, it's a talk, then it's more expensive and have more value. But this is what municipality can do, to plan areas, to orientate areas where can be allowed to build collective building, where there will be individual buildings, where there will be business parts, etc. Major mentioned as well, good case, which, for example, which part will be allowed only for high buildings, which part for recreation, which for residents, like 1 floor, 2 floors. So this sincere businesses, construction businesses, will be more kind of secure. We don't have much time. Okay, I'm finishing. Let's say, let me just finish. So this is that construction businesses are not secure because every time government change or municipalities stuff change, they change the urban planning of cities. There are no continuity, and businesses and citizens are not felt that they will be secure because every time that there are so much changes regarding the planning. I was, when you were talking, I was thinking, I remember that the main place where the square is, it is foreseen to be like a walking square, and those parallel roads, the one that we are here, to be transferred in kind of a ring road, one way, to be able to accommodate traffic, and then other roads, like like streets that connect new neighborhoods. This is what I remember, what we worked when it comes to mobility. And it was integrity within project of the center of mobility that connects the train station with the bus station, makes possibility, offers possibility to connect those two parts. And because in many cases we see the railway as a barrier, as a problem, because people try to cross, and we had some fatalities. So maybe to have some underpass, a bypass, or overpass, so that to be able to connect the square and the surrounding. If I'm not mistaken, there was supposed to move a school, because municipality doesn't have public spaces, and maybe that to use as a bus station and to connect with the old train station, as because train station was also as a kind of identity of the Ferizaj. It's another debate if we start to talk now about why municipality cannot push things ahead. One of the things that I can remember now, it's a law for commasation. I think the partnership with community, it has to be done by the law, through a commasation law, to have co-owners, and then the municipality to invite businesses and businesses to offer opportunity, and whichever is the best, that to be accepted. So municipality, I'm not saying that it's not does not have a skill, but it does not have a power. And then it's also licensing of architects or planners. We don't have licensing. Everyone does the planning. Somebody does planning, but also takes a project, does the architecture as well. There are so much conflict of interest. But we don't have a chamber of architects or planners or licensing, so to take responsibility as well. You see sometimes when the building is built, the main architect is not mentioned. Usually they're anonymous. Only companies are known. So if they don't give responsibility for the work that they did. So there are so many rings or issues that needs to be worked at. For example, 10 years after this planning system, this professional structure of municipality need to be retrained to be able to work with new planning system, but also for us who are outside, to how to work the area map, etc. It is a problem because in a planning sphere, it came in the 0 point because whole system changed. I'm not saying bad or good, but political parties that come in power, whichever that are lots of mistakes done because plan has 20 years time. So whoever comes in government have to have this as a base to address cities development. They are political party that been elected, but plan is not politics. It doesn't have to do anything with politics. So this is a mistake as a concept of any political party that aim can be always connected with interest. We are not going there. But there are so many moments, themes for debate, that we can continue with another 5 other debates. I don't know if I answered to your... thank you very much for your contribution. And we are in the end of this program, so honorable guests and viewers, thank you for your participation in our presentation. Thank you, Major West Craiglow and Professor Eliza Hoxha for their presentation. Also, we thank American K4, Mayor of Ferizai, and Restaurant Orchidea. See you in other TV programs.